Let's get a little weird. Let's get a little odd. Those sounds you like to hear. We got it going on. It's the OddCast. It's the OddCast. It's the OddCast. It's the OddCast. Hello. How the heck is everyone doing today, tonight, whenever you're watching? Shout out to you and yours. Thank you so much for tuning in again to the OddCast, where stuff that's odd gets the nod. Tonight we have a very special guest, as I mentioned prior to this episode, the relentless Cody Warden. Cody, introduce yourself.
How's it going, everyone? I'm Cody Warden from San Diego. I am one of the boxing trainers at Encinitas Boxing, active MMA enthusiast, strength and conditioning professional, and glad to be here.
Thank you so much for coming in. So tonight we're going to be talking about some really interesting subjects, from UFC to boxing, whether it's UFC 229, UFC 230, whether it's, maybe an odd take on the Diaz Brothers, or whether it's Cody just kind of sharing some of his expertise into how he got into fighting and what makes him do what he does. So, guys, I hope you're down for a great episode. It's going to be fun. So, Cody, why don't you tell us kind of your foray into fighting? What really got you into fighting? I mean, were you bullied at a young age? Sorry to just come out and ask you that. Yeah,
damn, dude. I thought I was the asshole here, but maybe this stuff should be over there with you. So I got into fighting when I was in middle school, 8th grade. I was bullied by a really large, just terrifying kid, and I told myself,
Wait. Do you mind if what's it? Come on. We need names.
I'll go ahead and to protect his identity and my own shame, I'll keep it to myself. But yeah, no, I was bullied. I was bullied by a large guy. He told me he wanted to do some bad things to me, and
wow.
Just anyone that's out there that's ever been bullied before knows the fear that comes from it. And what I've learned over the years is the fear of being bullied is just so much worse than just getting punched in the face.
Really?
Yeah.
But so that's what. How did you start when you were? What got you into MMA? Like, what did you start with when you were getting bullied?
Oh yes. So, let me fast forward a little bit. So, I've always been into martial arts. I got a black belt in Taekwondo when I was younger, but
really,
yeah, I got a black belt in Taekwondo when I was 14. I was in it for about 8 years. And then after that, I got into some traditional sports, football, soccer, basketball. And then right around sophomore year...
Horse racing. Just kidding.
Yeah. Running the dogs, actually. My sophomore year, I've always was a little bit more into contact than the normal Taekwondo kid. And I did really good in some of the competitions. So I said, hey, what the hell? I'm going to give Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a go. Let's see what my ground game's like.
Wow.
Yep. And got my ass kicked by a lot of tough guys. I was only probably $145 soaking wet. And, when I was training with a lot of the guys down in San Diego at the arena, that's home to a lot of Navy SEALs and other elite Marines down there. So
shout out to you. Thank you for your service.
Yep. And so a lot of just big guys down there. So I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Got a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu actually in Del Mar, but I was also training down in San Diego. And then I started getting into Muay Thai. And finally, I got into boxing when I was a freshman in college. I was at a gym and they were having what's called a smoke fight.
And what's a smoke fight for all those who don't know?
Yeah, a smoke fight essentially is an unsanctioned fight. So no judges, close the doors, don't let anyone in.
The only rule to smoke fights is that you don't talk about smoke fights.
Yeah, something like that, right? Jeez, yeah. So it was tough, man. You got to fight everyone in town, and who's the biggest, baddest guy in town. And so I got into boxing that way. Became one of the only. I honestly don't quote me on this, but there was no USA or amateur boxing guys in Santa Cruz when I was going to college up there. They did have a couple.
And your hands
guys.
are licensed, by the way, right?
Well, I don't really know what that means, but yeah, I do. Well,
that means if you hit someone, you can get assault with a deadly weapon as a charge.
Well, I'll trust your opinion on that since you're the legal guy.
But anyway, sorry.
I'm planning on never going to jail if that's the case.
Continue your story. Sorry for the interruption.
It's all good. So yeah, that led me here. I mean, I competed in Santa Cruz. We traveled all around. For those that don't know, Santa Cruz is a small town south of San Francisco, just west of San Jose. And so it was Oakland, it was Salinas, it was San Francisco. Those were all where the competitions were. And actually, there was a guy in town. He ended up being the middleweight champion of the world for the UFC, Luke Rockhold.
Oh yeah, he trains with Khabib, right? And DC
at AKA American.
Yeah, he trains at American Kickboxing.
Yep. So I don't know where AK is now, but there was a gym in Santa Cruz. That's where he's from. And so yeah, at the time, people knew who he was. He wasn't the champion or anything. And I guess we had a small little fight culture there, and so I brought that with me after college, and I've been boxing and kickboxing and doing Muay Thai ever since. Cool.
Well, thanks for. Hey, I appreciate you first of all sharing the story of getting bullied and kind of rising up from that. It's again a blueprint for everyone out there. This guy's an inspiration, very relentless, hard worker. It's an awesome story. So let's take your fighting expertise and let's translate that to what we're talking about, like UFC 229. I know it was a little bit ago.
Yeah.
We've been intending to talk about it for weeks. Let's break it down super quick. Let's go Louis Volkov real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, look, from my perspective, not being the fight expert, I see that as being kind of an awkward fight where Volkov is basically dominating. Even though he's not really dominating, Volkov is going for the haymaker the entire fight, and he luckily gets it in the last 10 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis is a bigger name now than Volkov, and I'll be honest with you, sometimes there's these fighters, and I watch a lot of MMA, and I watch a lot of boxing, and I can't say I watch every fight, but I know the top guys. I've seen most of their fights. I didn't know who Volkov was.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know who he was. I mean, I heard he was based on the previews, like he was an elite striker. He was showing some phenomenal technique, but he wasn't very explosive at all. And so last round gets clipped by a haymaker, and down goes Volkov.
Down goes Russia. Well, no, yeah, it was very interesting. I mean, I think to that degree, I think Lewis is also, got the gift of gab, from when it's beating Ronda Rousey's fiance and saying, "Where's Ronda's finesse?" to saying, "My balls are hot." This guy has the gift of gab.
Yeah.
And it's compelling, right? And, we're going to talk about 230 moving forward, but it is interesting, the fight between him and DC. I mean, that's really the proving fight of if he is an elite UFC guy who can contribute to the, to the actual sport. I mean, because...
Most definitely.
Exactly. So the Ferguson-Pettis fight was, to me, actually the most entertaining. If you were talking pure fighting-wise,
yep,
the most entertaining fight of the night. Those guys are both fucking warriors. Thoughts about what Ferguson and Pettis' future are moving forward?
Well, what I look for in a top elite fighter, not just someone that is in the rankings the best in that current time frame, but someone that's going to transcend their time period and be known by future fighters and future fight enthusiasts. I look for someone that has the ability to put combinations together in an intelligent and sophisticated fashion. I'll be honest with you, Ferguson and Khabib are both great fighters. Probably, once again, don't quote me. I don't know where they're ranked, but I would guess they're top 3 in their division. I mean, Khabib is
definitely
obviously the champion. So, but
I think Ferguson's got to be the number 1 challenger right now. Not to cut you off. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but I would say he's either number 1 or 2 or 3. Like, he's definitely right there. But are they the type of name that gets mentioned 5-10 years from now? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I can tell from your voice.
I don't know. I mean, maybe
But
maybe they beat someone really famous. Like, maybe, like, okay, so Khabib beat Conor. But is he going to
He didn't beat him. He manhandled him.
Yeah. But is he going to be known as the guy that beat Conor? Kind of like Buster Douglas was known as the guy that beat Mike Tyson? Or is he going to be just known as Khabib?
Well, see, that I think he's still only 30. He does have some time moving forward. I mean, if he retires, then I totally see where you're coming from. If he goes on and defends his title for 5 more years, though, I think he goes down synonymously as one of the greatest pound for pound. I mean, now his resume isn't as great as everyone else's, and I totally understand that. But
yeah.
Khabib, I'm talking about. I think Khabib Ferguson is a great fight. I think Pettis McGregor is a great fight moving forward. That's the card that I would sell. Now, I understand where you're coming from in terms of the name recognition. So let's talk about the Nurmagomedov McGregor fight.
Yeah.
The 229 headliner. Nurmagomedov takes out Conor in the 4th round on a, what was it, rear naked choke?
Yeah. That's...
You know, after basically bullying him for the better part of 4 rounds, you know, the 3rd round was really the only one that was even up for grabs in terms of Conor showing some life on the stand-up. But to be honest, Khabib landed the better stand-up shot out of anyone. If there's a highlight of the best stand-up shot of the night, it's Khabib's right hand, I believe.
Yeah. Caught Conor with an overhand right. Some people have already commented on this since this is kind of... But anyways, yeah, people have already been commenting on this fight, and it's kind of what I was saying as well, which is Conor didn't look like Conor in that fight. I look at small things just to understand the game really well, and just like most people say, you know, football is a game of inches. Boxing is a game of small angles, or fighting is a game of small angles, and the smallest angle makes the biggest difference. And one of the things I noticed in that fight was Conor wasn't doing his normal footwork where he's bouncing in and out of the pocket.
And explain that from a purely boxing sense. I want you to give me the boxing and analysis of that.
Yeah, so a technique that a lot of boxers will use, especially amateur boxers, is they'll have their feet constantly moving in and out of what I would call the punching range.
Lean forward a little bit into the mic if you could. Not too much. You don't have to lean too much. Thank you so much.
So, when you are moving in and out of a pocket, you're essentially giving yourself the opportunity to strike at any given instance.
Or be struck.
But then also taking that away simultaneously. It changes the distance. It changes the timing. It also allows you to dictate where the fight takes place.
Does that tie in a little bit to when commentators are like, he's finding his distance?
Exactly.
Okay. And so what do you mean by that, the pocket, in terms of the McGregor-Nurmagomedov fight?
So Conor uses that technique very often. He displayed that technique really beautifully versus Jose Aldo, where he was able to kind of time Jose coming in using that move. He stepped back and countered with a beautiful just left hand right off the chin, which
it's just smooth as ice.
Just took him. That basically is when I think that Conor became Conor McGregor.
Oh, that's when Conor became Mystic Mac.
Yeah, exactly. He became Mystic Mac.
What he did, and in that sense, not to cut you off from this point, I think also that what played into Aldo, that was not Aldo's game plan. Conor's shit talk literally made Aldo switch his game plan, and that's another brilliance about Conor, is that a lot of people talk shit, his works.
Yeah, it does.
But it did not get to this Russian hard ass. I'm sorry. Khabib did not give a shit.
But like I said, Conor just didn't have that same footwork. He was very stiff, upright, hands down. In Conor's own words, he was thinking about how to how to not lose the fight instead of how to win the fight.
Yeah, I remember his coach
unusual.
was saying that too a bit on the Joe Rogan podcast, I believe.
Yeah.
He was saying that. That's interesting. So, look, that's a very good analysis. Guys, I bet you didn't know that before this. What do you think about the aftermath of the fight? It has to be spoken about.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, I shouldn't just ask you so. Do you think that Khabib was justified in leaping over the fence at Dylan Dennis? And do you think that, like, in light of it, really, like, he should be sanctioned, or do you think that he should just receive no punishment?
Well, not to get all ethical on you, but I like to. I don't know what justified is. It's a form of, in Plato's sense, but basically, I don't really believe in such things as justify. What I would say is I would do it. I mean, if it was me, I would have done it, and that's the best way for me to look at it.
Okay.
If there's anyone that's at fault, it's got to be the UFC. Shit, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. UFC, I still want a job.
Hey, all of the UFC, no, they're running
you
a
guys
great
are great.
organization.
No, they're great. But what they did, they made a mistake on a marketing sense in the fact that they used they used their conflict to market the fight and sell tickets, and then they reprimanded them for
doing exactly what was marketing the fight. Exactly. I totally agree with that. So I also saw a quick, just the final thing on 229. I saw a super quick video about that Herb Dean was kind of letting Conor cheat. Conor was throwing 12-6 elbows. He was holding Khabib's pants. Joe Rogan, even at one time while commentating the fight, was saying he was grabbing the cage. He's holding his pants. He used an illegal knee while on the ground because you can't knee a downed opponent. He was using his open hands against the face rule, an illegal kick with no warning. I just wonder if that was a little bit of the bias of the UFC kind of wanting to retain their champion.
Yeah, I mean, these types of things happen
Not
in
retain,
the moment.
but come and get their champion again, sorry.
Yeah, these types, I mean, when it is so apparent that everyone in the audience it becomes the narrative of the fight when there's so much cheating, then you can maybe question whether or not a ref is playing into the UFC's propaganda. Or I don't even know what you want to say, but
their hand.
But these things also happen in the moment. This happens in every single sport.
Fair point.
NBA. I mean, what the hell is a gather step? Can we just have 2 steps or 3 steps?
What's holding in the NFL? I mean, jeez.
I mean, yeah, God. So all these areas are gray, and any great athlete will push the boundaries until told otherwise.
Wow, that's a very good argument. So if anything, you could argue that someone pushing that and not getting called by the ref is actually genius, in a way.
Yeah.
So I take that point very, very much. So, dude, we broke down 229. Let's give a quick. We don't know too much about 230 other than Lewis DC, but I want to know kind of just your brief thoughts about 230. Before we do that, guys, I got to do a beer of the day for you. Didn't do one last time. I'm drinking on a Ojai Merc from McKellar Beer, McKellar Brewing in San Diego. It's 7.8% alcohol content. The hops are Idaho 7 and Citra. It's freaking awesome. McKellar in San Diego again.
All right, I'm on a diet, but let me.
He's got to try a sip. Hey,
Ravens, good beer.
Cheers.
I'll give you that.
McKellar and SD, guys. You can order it online at shop.mckellar. That's MIKKELLERSD.com.
Is this the one I like, the blue guy one? The blue, I don't know, like, I don't know the name of it, but yeah, you know what I'm saying.
That one was awesome. That one was an exclusive one. I forgot what that was.
But that's this company, though.
That is this company.
I can tell by their artwork.
Yeah, guys, so McKellarSD.com. Order it up. Support.
Not getting paid to say this, but yeah, terrific.
Absolutely amazing. You can finish that if you want.
Okay.
All right, so UFC 230. This is the first time ever that it was a blank versus blank card up until, like, very close to the fight. Now it's DC, Daniel Cormier versus Lewis. I know this is an open-ended one. I'm trying not to give you many of these, but thoughts.
Thoughts, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, like, I'm not really a DC fan.
He's kind of goofy, but he's good. It's weird.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that's like, how is this guy so good? But he wins fights, except for against John Jones.
I think he's pound for pound the biggest right now. I mean, best right now. One of them.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
He is.
He's got to be. He's a two-division champion.
Exactly.
He's defending the heavyweight champion. But, I mean, honestly, there's a thing about boxing and MMA. They're two different sports, but they have very similar characteristics. One thing that happens time and time again is fighters, when they get to a certain level, start picking their fights. They just have more say over their career at that point.
Well, you have to almost at a certain level, just because it becomes a career. I mean, it becomes millions of dollars at stake.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you have to earn that a little bit more than some of these guys are. Like,
yeah,
DC, I know you're a great fighter. You are a great fighter, but you are defending the heavyweight champion for the first time against Derek Lewis. I mean, there's just other options I think that would have not only sold more tickets, but just would have been
a guy who took it on short notice after basically going the distance.
I mean, he didn't look very great in his last fight. He barely pulled that through.
Does he win?
He even said in his post-fight interview that he just wasn't. He's like, fight for the title. Oh, I don't know. You can pull it. Fight for the title. Fight for the title. Like, I can't even keep my hands up or some shit like that. He just. I think it's one of those things that happens. Like, you'll see this probably. I don't know who Canelo's fighting next, but I guarantee you it's probably a guy I've never heard of before.
Canelo, that's one thing I wanted to bring up to you in a bit when we talk about boxing. I mean, Canelo doesn't fucking matter who he's fighting because he's signed that mega deal for however many fights. That's what guys do now who are guaranteed. You know, they sign deals for a certain amount of fights.
I think he had like $330 million for 10 fights.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And he, in my opinion, for someone who didn't even beat Triple G, I'm sorry, he didn't, but, you know, whatever.
So, but yeah, that's the point, is, so he fights a guy like Triple G. I mean...
Relate this back to the DC Lewis, though.
Yeah, so Triple G being one of the best fighters out there, John Jones fought last, just like Canelo fought Triple G, who's a big name. DC fought Stipe, who was the heavyweight champion and fighting, I believe, at the time as the person that had defended the heavyweight title more times than anyone else.
Well, Stipe's the only guy who solved the Francis Ngannou problem.
And he solved a terrific problem. Stipe is a tremendous fighter.
Very underrated.
I think that he's one of those guys that does what needs to do. He fights very intelligently. He doesn't have a lot of like attributes that make him a great fighter, but he tends to solve problems really well. And DC somehow was able to solve his problem. In my opinion, that warrants a rematch. Also, if you're not going to get the rematch for Stipe, it better be for a good reason. Like, you want to fight John Jones for the heavyweight title, or you want to fight Alistair Overeem, or you're looking to fight Brock Lesnar, something with a name recognition and challenge.
Interesting.
Derek Lewis is easy work.
Well, he's only a name recognition in the fact that he, said his balls were hot on an interview and it went viral. Yeah. I hate to say it. I mean, no one knows him other than that.
And his Instagram is absolutely
gold. Yeah. What's it called though? I mean, so you're saying you got DC in that fight?
Yeah.
Hands down, easy money. What do you think? Knockout, TKO?
I think it's just. I mean, I honestly.
Ground and pound.
I don't really know DC's game enough to figure out how he would stop the fight.
This is my opinion of DC. I think DC doesn't get shined because DC's not spectacular at anything. He's good at everything.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I see it being like a long, drawn-out fight. Either wins by rear naked choke or ground and pound stoppage, probably near the fourth round.
I mean, rear naked choke is like kind of the ground and pound of like submissions in a way,
Yeah, basically. I mean, most of the time what happens is fighters have this unspoken word where when you're fighting someone in the ring, you can feel them give up. And there's kind of this weird thing
where the person that's dominating the fight
takes their foot off the gas just enough to where they don't want to hurt their opponent. I don't know. There's just something about it.
It must be so. I mean, I'm sure even. You and me have played one-on-one basketball. I mean, you feel it a bit in that.
Yeah.
But it must be so much different in fighting, where it's like even the slightest bit. You're like, oh, I got this.
Yeah. See, I mean, there's always that chance that like you can get hit, but there is
get a little cocky, catch an elbow. Yeah.
But there is a point in a fight where it becomes kind of like 20 seconds left with 25 seconds left on the shot clock in basketball, and the other team just stops putting the pressure on the offense. Game's won. Why try to go up for another slam dunk? It's disrespectful. It's kind of like same thing in fighting where like it's just over.
But I feel like in fighting, just to like, I mean, correct me if I'm. I feel like in fighting that must be just because of the nature of fighting. It must just be so much more like noticeable and tangible. Like you can really feel them let off.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
even if they let off just the slightest bit, it must feel like a mile. You know?
Most of the time you'll see this happen where the wrestling is super strong.
Or they're fighting to get out of every single hold. You know?
They're beating him on the ground every which way. They stand up. They're getting punched, pummeled, standing up. They go to the clinch. They're getting thrown. It's just a mismatch.
Interesting.
And that's what I predict for this fight is Derek Lewis is going to be just outmatched professionally in every way the fight goes. And right around probably around the fourth round, I would say, just due to his relentless energy. Because if you think about it, Derek Lewis had trouble going 3 rounds. Now he has to attack on another 10 minutes of fighting on top of that.
Oh,
so he's going for an additional 80%, somewhere around there.
Yeah, this where the big boys come to play. I mean, championship fights. I totally see where you're coming from. Well, dude, I appreciate you sharing that with us. That was a really good insight into like something on fighting that not everyone may know. So, dude, if you have any more of those, definitely bring those out. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Let's talk boxing a little bit. I do want to come back to we're going to talk a little bit of guys. The GOAT in UFC is for people who
MMA.
are fighters.
MMA.
Excuse me. Yeah, because he did like Strike Force and stuff, right? And Pride.
Yeah.
The GOAT often in a sport is different for fans and for people who played the sport.
Yeah.
And I think it's very similar in the UFC where the GOAT, for a lot of us who, don't actually fight, is going to be someone like, someone who's bigger, like Tito Ortiz or Chuck Liddell, like just those big old school names that we hear of. But it is not. It's Fedor Emelianenko. You heard it here first from my man Cody Warden. We're going to come back to that. We're going to talk boxing though a bit first, if you want to. We'll break it down. What do you think of the Fury, Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder fight coming up? I think it's a bigger point of the revitalization of the heavyweight division of boxing. I think it's something that we all want to see as boxing fans, as fighting fans. I think it's going to be an interesting fight. We watched the sit-down that Wilder and Fury had. It's on December 1st at the Staples Center. You can find it on pay-per-view. What are your thoughts about the fight? What are your predictions? Does Fury stand a chance against the powerful right hand of Wilder? Does Wilder's wild style, where he just connects and then starts flailing, get caught by a calm and strong chins Tyson Fury?
Yeah, it's the story of the fight will be Fury's jab versus Wilder's hooks.
Yeah, right hand. The right hand.
It'll be the right hand. The left hook's not bad either.
It's not.
Look, Wilder has got. I don't know for sure, but I bet you if you put his punching power at the UFC Performance Institute and measured it, force per square inch, it's gonna be the hardest punch in MMA and boxing.
Oh, dude. It's
he's
absolutely
harder
insane.
than everyone else.
Dude, he's hospitalized. He's hospitalized people.
Yeah, well, 40. No, he's probably
He fought some French guy And there's a video of the guy. The guy is literally like dancing all over the ring, getting knocked out. I've seen people get knocked out. Dude, he hospitalized some guy. They had to lift him in a stretcher and take him straight to the hospital.
Yeah, I never want to see that. But
you don't at all.
To go back to your original question, I think Fury. I also listen to people's, interviews that they do before the fights. I like to see where their head's at. Fury seems to be coming off of what I like to call like a transition period in any person's life. He's dealt with
mental health issues.
Mental health issues.
Yeah,
thank you.
Very powerful in the Joe Rogan podcast, actually.
I didn't get a chance to listen to it, but you can almost kind of tell based off of his interview that he was giving with Wilder, where he's saying like things like, your power is all negative. I've dealt with higher power beings. I don't know, just things that are just you typically hear from someone that's coming out of like recovery for drug abuse or just.
Well, he admitted to drug and alcohol abuse.
Well, okay, so there you go, exactly, and he just sounds like one of those people that is coming off of like a drug abuse where they all of a sudden found God and they're the most spiritual people. They're next to Gandhi, and like they kind of they absorb so much of this. A lot of the how should I say it? It's not.
Maybe a mentality that they don't truly believe in. They're just almost looking for something. Do you mean?
Yeah, so like sports, I'm sure he's working with a sports psychologist, and sports psychologists tend to try to get your mind in the right place.
Yeah.
One of the problems of a sports psychologist not being your main coach is they can tend to make you believe things that just aren't real.
Okay.
They may make you think that you're better than you are, or that you're more capable of something than you are.
So they're kind of yes men, typical.
Yes men, yeah, exactly. Like
because that's where the
you
paycheck
can do
is.
you can do anything you put your mind to. Fury, like I'm not saying that you can't beat Wilder. What I'm saying is you can't beat Wilder after coming off a 2-year layoff, after doing drugs, weighing however much. Dude, he was so out of shape.
He looked like shit.
It was terrible.
I mean, just to weigh into your point in regards to you were talking about mentality of a fighter. And when I saw that interview, I saw him. I didn't really notice that, but when you said it, something clicked in my head of he was almost accusing Wilder of the behavior that you're saying he was conducting.
Yeah.
And it is true that people, when they have a fault that they see in themselves, they try and deflect it on other people.
Yeah,
the most homophobic people in the world are the people who call everyone gay and call everyone the F word. I don't want to say it on air. I'm just not going to. People who are racist call people the N word and stuff. That's it is what it is. So maybe that is representative of your point, where he was just saying Deontay Wilder. He was like, I don't think you believe in what you say. You're just putting on. He said Deontay Wilder, because his name is the Bronze Bomber, for winning the bronze medal in the Olympics. He said, "Oh, look at you! You call yourself the Bronze Bomber. You're proud of getting third place. That just shows what type of person you are." And it's like, dude, he also has knocked out like 40 straight people, hospitalized people along the way. Again, not advocating the hospitalization of people, but I think he might have been deflecting some of his own insecurities. And he was like, I'm a man of God now. I'm a man of God. And he just kept...
And he said, like, that belt means nothing to me. Like, okay, then what are you fighting for?
Oh, yeah, he said, at first, he said something hilarious. He said, I'm going to win it because it's gold and green. He said, I'm going to win it and make a bronze one and send you the bronze one, which is great banter. That is great.
Yeah, Fury he's quick with the banner.
But then he at the very end of the thing, he was saying, I'll just give the belt back to you when I win it. Like hook, line, and sinker, not even bronze it. And it was like, dude, you win a fucking title. You wear that motherfucking belt with pride, homie. Like you bring that to all the So anyway,
different mentality. I think
we got Fury though. I think we got Wilder.
I take Wilder by TKO. I don't like Fury's. Just to go from like an analysis standpoint, I don't like Fury's stabbing left hand versus Wilder's wild overhand right. I think he lands effective jabs, but near the end probably of like the 7th or 8th round, since he's had a long layoff, he starts to fade and he gets hit with one shot, which will change the narrative of the fight into Wilder's favor probably. So if I was gonna go over under, I would definitely go over 6 rounds, but I'm gonna take TKO on that for sure.
So like TKO on the 8th or 9th?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna hedge that bet.
Interesting. Okay, so you heard it here first, folks. Wilder's gonna take that fight with relative ease. It's not gonna be easy, super easy, but it'll be relatively easy.
Yeah.
So look, what I want to ask you about a bit then on that is,
I think a better question though is
please.
Wilder versus
Anthony
Joshua.
So we got AJ versus D-Dub.
Yeah.
Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder. I believe they're like a collective of like 57-0 between the two with 56 knockouts or some fucking wild. I don't know. He was questioning me earlier on that number. It's something around there.
I think it's more.
It probably is, knowing them. That's such an interesting fight. So first of all, let me break this down. I don't want to ask you super openly.
Yeah.
What do you first of all think about Anthony Joshua? Is he the truth?
So remember going back to where we first started, where we talked about, is someone the best of their era, or is someone so good that they transcend their era into the next era or the future era?
That they become synonymous with boxing itself.
Yeah, I mean,
basically.
the word GOAT gets thrown out a lot these days.
Of course it does.
Everyone's the freaking GOAT now.
It's a fair point.
I think Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, I think they will make their way to ESPN's 30 for 30 or something 20 years down the line if they fight each other. But other than that, they're not getting talked about very much often.
Well, that to me that's not even like a one-time fight. That's a fucking epic 3-fight saga. Because
you're living today with those fighters being the best. So you're looking at the 3 best fighters want to fight. Like, that makes sense. But
no, I'm saying they should fight 3 times.
What I'm trying to say is that, people are like, there's a reemergence in the heavyweight division. I would say that there is a reemergence in interest in the heavyweight division. But in terms of actual talent, it hasn't reemerged since Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield.
Well, so, can we transition a bit here?
Yeah, sure.
What I want to transition this into is one thing that we've wanted to talk about is I think that plays into like the camps behind fighting, who's setting up the fights, kind of the stuff that characters. People don't know. The hidden characters. That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
And we've talked about kind of like, just for example, like, whether it's, Tyson back in the day, obviously with Don King, or now it's like Bob Arum basically controls boxing, or De La Hoya with Golden Boy, or
the promoters.
Yeah, with the camps. And we were kind of comparing and contrasting 2 different camps. One is a boxer, and one is a UFC guy. It was Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Lomachenko.
Yeah. So we were comparing and contrasting 2 different people from relatively same geographical area.
Yeah, Lomachenko's
different
Ukrainian,
sports.
Correct?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, they're all Eastern European.
Exactly.
But to quick correction.
Bob
Arum, De La Hoya, they're not camps, they're promoters. The camps are actually the trainer, manager, and people inside. So,
but I feel like promoters tend to get the only reason I said that,
they'll be a character.
They'd be like associated with camps. Like Arum is heavily associated with certain boxers,
correct,
as is De La Hoya. I mean, De La Hoya and Canelo Alvarez are like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, no,
that's what I meant. You're totally my bad.
In a fighter's camp, but they could be in multiple fighters' camps.
Exactly. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. You're completely okay. Anyway, keep going though.
So, talking about
who do we do first?
Nurmagomedov.
I always say he could snap your head off. Nurmagomedov.
Okay.
Because he probably could. He fights bears. There's video of him being a kid fighting a bear.
Yeah, so Conor had some things to say about him. In the,
yeah, I mean, so he does have Ali Abdelaziz, who's his manager, who was a former. Honest to God, he was a former member of something called MOA, Muslims of America, which was a group that was registered as a group with terrorist ties. Now, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, this is represented by terrorists. That's not my point at all. I'm just stating the facts of the matter. Yeah. And also that he does have ties with Razman Kadyrov, who is the leader of Chechnya, who has set up, again, I'm not trying to make a political point at all, but he has set up concentration camps for homosexuals. And they get systematically killed. And I have to say, I cannot co-sign that. That is terrible behavior. Humans should not kill other humans like that. That's bullshit. So anyway, his camp is kind of surrounded and shrouded by kind of shadowy figures. But why did it take him so long to get a fight with Conor? I mean, is that associated with his camp? Is that associated with the promotion or what?
So I don't know who Habib's head coach is, but I'm pretty positive it's not his father. His father used to be his coach growing up. I know that. Okay, I don't think it's his father anymore, and I think that actually plays a really big role into a fighter's success, and also who they surround themselves with. So taking Habib, who's surrounded by shadowy figures, he comes from very humble beginnings, but as of recently has found himself surrounded by wealth, fame, and while he still lives with his family back in Dagestan, much of his time is still spent with some of these people that are constantly showering him with gifts and prize. And
his Instagram is like him visiting like all these royal families in Russia and shit, and like it's wild.
Exactly. And then you have Vasily Lomachenko, who is still trained by his father. His father, I believe, won Best Fighting Trainer of the Year for 2018, or maybe it was 17, in the ESPYs. His father has been in his camp ever since he was little. His father trained many fighters when he was young, but decided to kind of concentrate on just his son. His son went 398. It's an even number, I think. 390 something, and won as an amateur. Now, to put that in perspective, I mean, I don't think that, I've heard Colin Cowherd say that Floyd Mayweather is the best fighter in the world because he's undefeated. Okay. Can't argue with that. But let's talk amateur rankings. I mean, I know these guys aren't the world champions, but to even... I mean, there could have been a chance in one of those fights that it was close and it went to the other guy. Like, never did it go to the other guy. He was able to decisively win 398 times as an amateur.
That's fucking wild.
2 gold medals.
That's fucking wild.
Him and his father came into boxing. They're going to do great things for boxing. He comes into boxing as a professional. He goes to all the camp. I mean, every promotion company wanted him. And he only had one request. They all said, we'll give you $1 million signing bonuses. They'll shower him with everything that he possibly wants. And all he asked for was, I want to fight for a title now, and at the latest, my second fight. And everyone was like, you're crazy. Like, how are we going to sell a title fight to a guy that never fought before as a professional? No one knows who you are. Like, yeah, congratulations, you won 2 gold medals. But, like, outside of, like, Ukraine, no one knows who you are. Uh-huh. And the only... and so there was a few people that, like, said that they would do it, but they never put it in writing. Long story short, Bob Arum is the only guy to put it on paper. Bob Arum goes, you got it. Second fight. Fights Orlando Salido. Takes his second loss. First loss as a professional. Second loss ever in his life.
And did he get beat down?
No. So what happened was he learned the lesson which kind of ties back to what we talked about earlier, which is you got to do what you got to do to win. Orlando Salido, through low blows, elbows, he grabbed, he did everything he needed to do to win, and the ref didn't step in, and Lomachenko, as a rookie professional, never faced with that kind of adversity before, didn't complain enough. He wasn't complaining to the ref.
Did you see Khabib do that during the fight? Khabib, just to tie it into what we were saying, Khabib actually went to Herb Dean after the rounds and was like, "Do you not see grabbing me?" You can hear it in the mic. So just that proves your point that you need to complain if you feel like you're getting...
If you feel like you're getting robbed, you definitely want to make a point, at least to bring the attention to the referee so he can address it. And if he sees it again, he's like, okay, I see what you're saying.
Exactly.
So he didn't do that. He ends up taking a loss. I think it was a split decision loss. And ever since then, he's just absolutely demolished every single person. He's going up. He's the fastest 3-division champion. For everyone that doesn't know what that means that he's going up in weight classes.
Yeah.
So I don't know where he started and where he is now. I think he's at lightweight now. So he's probably at featherweight, so on and so forth. Boxing has lots of junior, middle... junior and super divisions.
One of the best boxers ever, probably, and one of the most underappreciated, right?
Yeah, and this is what, like I was saying, remember where I talked about fighters being known past their generation,
or within the fighting game, other boxers, are going to be like, I want to be like Lomachenko.
Yeah, that's a good point. So other fighters are definitely trying to take to his style. I think
they'd say your favorite rapper's favorite rapper.
Yeah.
He's your favorite boxer's favorite boxer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you noticed that when Floyd was dominating, and he obviously can still come back and do that. You see a lot of people adapting the Philly shell, which is a low front hand with a high backhand.
Sorry, what is that called?
It's called the Philly shell.
Tell. Can you just, from a boxing standpoint, can you break that down for people?
Yeah. So if your left foot's forward and your
show them a little. I mean,
Okay, so if your left foot is forward and your right foot is back, normally your boxing stance is your right hand is up protecting your chin. They call it your button. Don't let them press it. Your front hand is out. If you're more aggressive, you'll probably have your hand closer because you'll have more head movement. If you're slower up top, your front hand will be out and you'll tend to be more of a jabber.
Okay.
So what Floyd does, which is unusual, it's kind of an old style.
The shoulder roll.
So that's the Philly shell. The shoulder roll is the defensive portion to the actual positioning of the body. The Philly shell is where you drop the left arm to cover your body. Your right hand is up. So you'll use this hand to parry jabs and block hooks. But when someone throws that overhand right, you'll use your shoulder instead of your hand to hit the punch off of and send it away. So that's a Philly shell technique. It was made popular by Tony...
Lights Out?
Yeah. James Toney.
Lights Out?
James Toney.
Who got his ass beat by Randy Couture. That wasn't fair, though. That was a bullshit.
Yeah, that was...
People say, that means UFC is better than boxing. It's that was not the thing that makes UFC better than boxing. I'm sorry. But, so that James Toney popularized it. I mean, dude, it seems like to pull that off, though, to use your shoulder as a blocking mechanism rather than, your glove, that would take a tremendous amount of athleticism and anticipation. Because if you get caught doing that, you get caught pretty bad.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll use it in my defense.
Really?
And I teach it. But I think, what makes Floyd so good is that he doesn't ever show the same look twice. And if he does, he spaces it out greatly between other looks. So he doesn't stay in this position. He'll be in a low crunching position when he jabs to the body. He'll have an upright hand guard when he wants to fake back and counter with the overhand right. And then when he wants to be defensive, he's against the ropes and he's forced to be defensive, he'll resort to the Philly shell as a way.
Interesting.
But you'll see a lot of, anyways, to go back to it, a lot of fighters will use that. Vasily Lomachenko, though, he is your boxer's favorite boxer and the next generation's favorite boxer. I think he's going to transcend this generation. Just from an intelligent way of boxing standpoint, I know people will fight me on this. I honestly think that he could beat anyone of any generation.
Say it.
In his weight class.
Wow.
Ever.
Wow. And that probably includes some gnarly people.
Yeah,
sure. In his weight class.
Sure.
Roy Jones would have you.
No, Roy Jones was too heavy, but
Roy Jones is another guy who went across belts too, or across weight classes. But,
yeah, Roy Jones was a great fighter.
But in Lomachenko's that would include some gnarly people.
I mean, Roy Jones actually was one of the people that was commentating on one of Lomachenko's fights and just saying this is the best fighter that's out there right now. He's the best fighter he's seen in the last 30 years. And he's like, I think he's the best fighter I've ever seen. I've watched tape from old fights all the time. Obviously, there was a progression in boxing, and right around like the 60s and 70s is where boxing kind of like made a transition from like a really old school where fighters were constantly changing stances and they didn't have a lot of head movement and they were doing some funky, weird things, and there was unlimited rounds and they changed it to 15 rounds and finally to 12 rounds for title fights. There's a whole lot of legitimizing boxing that took place from a history standpoint. But if you go back, I think that Vasily Lomachenko is on the forefront of where boxing will be in 15, 20 years. And it all comes down to
I was going to say, why would you say
more step, which is his camp. So his father, what his father does is just very unusual things, like making Vasily Lomachenko take ballet as a young child just to learn proper footwork and how to balance himself and how to glide and put combinations together with rhythm and timing. Then he uses
I took ballet as a kid.
Oh, nice.
I did.
Yeah, maybe that's why you're so good with your left hand coming up.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so he
keep going. Yeah, with what his camp does. I mean, like, dude, what makes him so unique? I mean, what makes him so, as you said, transcendent?
Yeah, and it comes down to his training style, his father being in his camp, the same characters day in and day out he trains with. It's not about variability in training, it's about intensity. So get good at what you're good at and then just increase the intensity as you get better at it.
Wow. So, I mean, by that you mean that essentially you want to run kind of like, not exactly identical, but a similar program every day, but just ramp up the intensity throughout the camp.
Yeah, so Bruce Lee famously said, I'm not afraid of a man that throws 1,000 kicks. I'm afraid of a man that throws one kick 1,000 times. So
I see what you mean. I mean, that makes sense. If you throw the same kick 1,000 times, that kick's going to be badass the 1,000 times you throw it. Whereas if you're doing
1,000
fucking
kicks.
roundhouse, then you're doing this kick, then you're doing a fucking drop kick, diving all over the floor, hurting your ribs and shit. That drop kick is not going to be as good as the roundhouse that you did 1,000 times.
So, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't try little things here and there. Like, it's okay to like have fun with your training regimen.
You have to, right?
But the basics and the fundamentals is what wins you championships, and getting great at that.
So let me ask you, can I relate that to just a point for you as a boxing trainer, for you as a just basically like a health professional? You do strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
For someone who's just kind of trying to basically get in shape, obviously MMA is going to be a great thing. But let's say you don't even do MMA. Would you kind of recommend a similar thing for someone getting in shape, to have a similar routine every day and kind of just ramp it up?
Yeah, so what I currently do right now with a lot of my clients, or I like to call them athletes, they're not clients.
That's awesome.
With my athletes, what I like to do is every single week we work on structure.
And by structure, what do you mean?
So every single Sunday they'll get an email from me. It'll point out a few things that they did last week that we want to work on this week. And it'll have their, what we call in the strength and conditioning world, a Mezzo Cycle. So it's a 2 to 3 week training program. We don't change it up too much in terms of the exercises that they're doing in that 2 to 3 weeks. We may fluctuate the intensity a little bit, like based off of, not to get too scientific on you, but if we're doing like a 1 rep max, how many times can you possibly do one exercise until if I had a gun to your head and I put 2.5 pounds on it, you couldn't do it anymore. So we find out what your 1 rep max is. We find out, and then using that 1 rep max, we'll find out what your 5 and 10 rep maxes are, just using just some estimations. We'll use those numbers to figure out intensity. Intensity essentially is the duration of an exercise, the amount of times you do that exercise, and the amount of weight that you apply to that exercise.
Wow.
So what we'll do is we'll just send out the same thing each week with the list of exercises for the next 2 to 3 weeks, the intensity, the weight, and I'll plan it all out for them. That way they know, okay, and I tell them, listen, I don't take every single person as an athlete. It takes a lot of time for me to put these things together. All I expect from them is for them to complete it. And I think that type of respect for each other is what gets results and what gets people to where they want to be.
The mutual respect of you designing for them, they better complete that shit.
Yeah, this isn't P90X where you buy my video and you can choose to do it when you want. It's, hey, I'm a coach, you're an athlete. Let's treat each other the way that we want to be treated. I want you to be where you want to be, but respect the fact that it takes me a lot of time to put this together.
I mean, it sounds like it's a very, synthesized plan with a lot of analytics. I mean, it sounds like it, so I see where you're coming from.
And I think that at the end of the day, everyone benefits from it tremendously. And so that's from a strength and conditioning standpoint what I tend to do. When I do personal lessons, I add a little bit of variability in there depending on what their goals are. So for instance, like, if I take a guy that's off the streets, right, and he's never trained before in any kind of MMA, and he tells me, hey, Cody, I want to be the best in the world. Okay? That's going to be a different kind of guy than a guy that has trained his entire life, and he's competing in 10 weeks. We're going to have a completely different regimen.
Or someone who says, yo, I'm a little bit overweight, I want to get back in shape.
Okay, so those are 10
Those are 3 completely different programs.
Yeah.
But those first 2 are more similar but different.
Similar but different, and then the third one is a completely different beast altogether.
That's an outlier, yeah.
So
what are the differences with the first 2, though? Yeah, versus, guys...
Yeah. Because those are 2 people that are those are 2 similar people that tend to show up, where you have the trained athlete that's been doing it forever, where he's kind of lost that romanticizing feeling of it, whereas, oh, I'm going to be the best ever. It's not that he can't be the best ever. It's just that he understands that that's a goal that is way down the line. We don't even think about goals like that. Okay, we think about what we can accomplish in the next 10 weeks, in the next 6 months at the most.
Yep.
Whereas the guy that comes in, we almost have to not only do a little bit of...
It's like me saying I'm the next Joe Rogan right now.
Exactly.
It's
not that it can't happen. It's just that
it's not even in your headlights, homie.
It's not there yet.
Pump the brakes.
Let's focus on the basic portions. Exactly. And so we not only will do a little bit of actual strength and conditioning for them, but a little bit of psychology work with them as well. Get their mind right. Get them understanding.
And how does that work? How does psychology within fitness?
Yeah. So sports psychologists, I'm not one, but they're great. I work with. I'm actually kind of in this psychology family, if you will. My mom is a marriage and family therapist, but she also has a lot of sports psychology friends, and we tend to have a lot of discussions together just as being a strength and conditioning coach, and they're in sports psychology.
Yeah, your mom's smart as shit too. I mean.
Yeah, and so she is, and shout out to my mom, but she's great. But basically, some of the things that they've taught me is positive reinforcement, what to look for in an athlete in terms of psychologically.
That's
yeah, there's certain indicators that you can tell. You can kind of also look at someone's psychology and understand whether or not they're being overtrained or being undertrained.
Based on their personality. Because I'm sure some people need overtraining.
So some people will complain about the first rep. You know what I mean? Those kinds of people are like, oh my God, this is so hard. But for a fact that they're okay. And so there's some people that you need to push. And then there's some people that you need to pull. And then there's some people that you need to just... keep it casual with. And so there's just a bunch of different psychological aspects that come into training, and so we really focus on those aspects. But really, like I said, and for all that don't know, Mike came up with a clever nickname for me. Horse with the blinders on.
Horse with the blinders. And the reason I say that about this kid is, look, all due respect, this guy has an incredible work ethic. It is, look, if you guys are in the San Diego area, let them know how they can find you real quick.
Yeah.
Coach Cody James. If you're in the San Diego area, though, and you're looking to, whether it's, like we said, whether it's anything from getting in shape to if you're an experienced fighter who's looking for an edge, whether it's psychologically, whether it's physically, whether it's just getting another jump in your step, contact this man. How do they get a hold of you?
So the best way to get a hold of me, just send me an email. I'm on it every single day. It's codyjames.coach@gmail.com. And then this is a little bit different, but if you want
link
to find,
in the bio.
Yeah, and then if you want to see in my my Instagram is actually the opposite. It's coach.codyjames or coach.codyjames is my whatever you call those things on Instagram.
Yeah, check the link for this. We'll be giving it to you. So look, let's move on a little bit to that's really interesting. We said we were gonna jump back to Fedor. I just want you to talk. Hey, you don't have to go into depth, but why is it that
I'll talk about Fedor all day.
Oh well, why is it that the main thing I want to know is because everyone, even people who really just kind of casually watch UFC, have at least heard Fedor Emelianenko, especially his recent fight with Chael Sonnen.
Yeah.
His recent domination of Chael Sonnen. Why is it that he's not necessarily the most attributed fighter within non-MMA circles, non-participants of MMA, but within MMA circles, he's GOAT.
Yeah, I think what you're trying to say in just a simple terms is, why is he not as popular outside of like the MMA or people that understand fighting on like on a personal level versus just the casual fan?
Well, geez, so why don't you just interview yourself, Paso?
Sorry.
No, you put it better than me.
No, I think his popularity doesn't meet necessarily his athletic ability in a couple of reasons.
Interesting.
He doesn't look like an MMA fighter. Kind of like Gennady Golovkin doesn't look like a boxer.
He looks like a James Bond villain.
He kind of does.
He looks like a James Bond villain.
He looks like, like an old James Bond villain, like Mr. Goldfinger or some stupid shit like that.
Jaws.
Yeah. So he actually studies in a different kind of martial art. He does a form of judo called sambo.
Sambo, which is the Russian national martial art, I believe.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm not really totally familiar with it, other than the fact that he can throw people on their heads like
it's very similar to judo. It's based off grips and throwing, and it's very, very like brute force.
Not like judo
physical.
where it's like least amount of effort to get the takedown. It's like just fucking throw him down. Get it done. Anyways, he's just a fucking badass, dude. Him in his tight little shorts, fucking up there, and everyone always says like, he whenever he throws someone down, he'll take two positions frequently. He'll take he'll take a guard, and then he'll do a vicious guard pass into side mount, where he'll just land really tough shots on someone looking for a Kimura as the way that he usually ends the fight.
He loves the Kimura.
He also does another move which is popular in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but not many people. If you're not a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu connoisseur or practitioner, then the 69 position just looks like someone sucking the other guys. You know what? So you'll see in the comment section sometimes like some pretty nasty things. But it's a very dominating position.
Or comment on what your thoughts are on that position, guys, if you want to.
But he'll tend to throw people down and then do a vicious guard pass into side mount, and then he'll spin over to 69, where he's looking for rear naked chokes and Kimuras. And
could you just to give, because Kimura sounds so badass, could you describe for the viewers, if they don't know what a Kimura is, how the Kimura is finished?
Yeah, it's tough to explain without doing it, but essentially the figure four is a lock that you'll do where when you grab onto someone's arm, your arms actually kind of make a 4, if you will. Like if you draw it out. It's a similar thing, but in a reverse style, where you reaching over someone's arm. The technique basically pushes their arm, puts pressure on their rotator cuff, and
it'd be like a dislocated shoulder, kind of, if they pushed it more.
Exactly, yeah. You'll definitely dislocate the shoulder if it's overdone. And so it's a really great move.
Pushing that backwards.
Yeah, traditionally it's a finishing move, but oftentimes what we see in modern MMA is people using it as a way to transition from whether they're in the guard and they need to transition out of the guard, or if they're in top position looking for the Kimura, that's really when they'll finish it. But we often see it most of the time from the guard position. They'll do that move and then they'll take a dominant position. Like, they won't finish it, they'll just use it as a way.
I see what you mean.
But he'll finish it. And what makes Fedor the best, though, is his resume, his relentless pursuit. And I honestly think that the most intense thing I've ever seen in MMA was Fedor Emelianenko gets slammed by Randy Coleman. No, not Randy Coleman. Who was that big black dude? I forget his name. He had blonde hair.
Is this in Pride?
Yeah. Fuck. Anyways,
is his first name Randy?
Yeah, maybe. Randy's in there, I feel like. Not Randy Coleman, though. Randy something. Anyways, he gets suplexed. Randleman. That's his last name, right?
Yeah.
What's his first name?
I don't know. Keep going, though. Keep going.
He gets this vicious suplex.
Kevin Randleman.
He gets this vicious suplex. Lands on his head. It looks like his body folds like
Fedor's?
Yeah, looks like he folds like a paper plate you're throwing into the fireplace. Like, just the most fucked up fold I've ever seen. Everyone's just like, he's dead. Like, he probably died. And somehow within like a minute, he's able to use the Kimura from the bottom side mount position, inferior side mount position, roll over what's his name again?
Kevin Randleman.
I was saying Coleman again. Kevin Randleman, and then finish him with a Kimura to end the fight. And it was just like one of those fights where it was just so dominating. And then he fought Mirko Cro Cop when Mirko Cro Cop was the most dangerous kicker in the world, and they used to say left kick hospital, right kick cemetery. I mean, he fought like,
that's what they said?
Yeah,
that's insane.
He just fought the most badass motherfuckers, because Pride was just like anyone and everyone, dude.
Pride was wild,
dude. He fought this sumo wrestler that was 600 pounds. I mean, he just fights wild fucking guys. That's insane.
Well, hey, you heard it here first. The GOAT, Fedor Emelianenko. It's funny because, a lot of people, families in fighting is such a big thing. And he is from a family in fighting. His brother was Alex.
Alexander.
Yeah, Alex with Aleks. I think it's Alex. Also fights. And we were having an interesting discussion about the Diaz brothers a little bit earlier. I didn't realize... Look, I like them just on a personal level, but I didn't realize that their fighting resume is...
They're easy to like, but hard to be a fan of.
I think that's a fair point. And whether it's, their, I would say, questionable record is what you bring up, or whether it's the fact that they kind of don't necessarily take fights, or they kind of avoid fights.
Yeah, that Diaz lost 11 of his 19 fights.
Yeah, so... I mean, geez Louise, that's not a great... He's 19 and 11, right?
Oh, was it 19 and 11?
I think he's like 19 and 11.
Oh, yeah, because he had 33... Yeah, you're right.
But, I mean, that's not a terrific record.
No.
By any means. And, they do... The thing is, they do perpetuate that they, kind of take fights on short notice, but it's, at the same time, they've turned down a plethora of fights. I mean, he was laughing about,
Dustin Poirier.
Yeah, about the Poirier. Yeah, that was a travesty. And look, if you're about taking fights on short notice, if you're about it,
he's about that life.
But then be about it. But then actually always be about it, though.
But you're right. this is what I take. We kind of talked about a little bit. We're listening to him speak, and honestly, you can kind of hear a little bit of punch drunk in his voice. I think the reason why he turns down so many fights nowadays is because he's made a little bit of money from the Conor fight, but I bet you he's kind of feeling that I don't know how many more of these I can do. If I'm gonna do it, I gotta get paid. It's gotta be worth it.
It's like Bam Bam Brandon Rios. Like, how many fights can that fool realistically take? It's like, dude, that fool just sits in the middle of the ring. It's like, I'm going to fucking war, homie. It's like, dude, okay, well, yeah, I know.
How many wars can you go to, though?
You don't have to prove it to us anymore, Bam Bam. Like I've seen you literally, him and, what was it, Mike Alvarez? Good God, that series was insane. But anyway, look, I'm a big fan of the Diaz brothers still. I wish them nothing but the best, Nate and Nick. I hope they get back in the UFC and get active. But, look, you guys got to get your records up, man. You do. And you got to fight some credible people. Look, if you say you're about that short notice fight, take that short notice fight. And always do it. I'm not saying that you don't do it, but you don't do it a shitload of time. I mean, they take short notice fights all the time, but they don't a lot of the time, too. And that's what you informed me on.
Yeah, I think listen, guys, it's okay to hang up the gloves. I mean, you guys made a little bit of money. You guys got a good name out there.
Fuck yeah.
You had a good run at it. I don't think there's anything to discredit them. They're
to be ashamed of at all.
They're no one's
they've carried themselves like thugs.
No one's God, I fucking hate watching Nick and Nate Diaz fight. No one will ever say that.
In the history of the world, no one. Or if you say that, you're just saying it because you hate. You're hating.
I don't think that they're they don't strike me as amazing athletes. I don't think they have God-given power in both hands. But they do have really sharp boxing for MMA. Sharp boxing and insanely good cardio. Yeah. We see that with Ferguson too. Really good cardio. Not necessarily just kill you power, but relentless
and insane shins. Insane shins. I mean, just it's look, it's that Stockton. It's that hood in them. It really is. Yo, I don't give a fuck, homie. They say, dude, Stockton, homie. Dude, it's fucking, it's gnarly, dude. All due respect. Shout outs to Stockton. Shout outs to my buddy Shark. He's from Stockton. He was tuning into episode 5 today. Yo, so look, let's just break it down with one last subject. I mean, we've really run the gamut. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's talk briefly about the UFC Performance Institute. And talk about some of the stuff that you're trying to get going on with strength and conditioning. So this is revolutionary at the UFC Sports Institute, Performance Institute, in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's basically a move to have equality within the UFC, access to trainers, dietitians, and much others. There's 2 main objectives. To address weight cutting within the UFC, and then also to address the issues surrounding USADA and drug testing. And those are the 2 issues that Cody was actually bringing to light to me.
Yeah.
And, within USADA, we have, the Golden Snitch, Jeff Nowitzki.
Jeff Nowitzki. That was a Joe Rogan podcast thing, huh?
Yeah, he was.
That's legitimate.
He was a complete guest. Yeah, he was a guest there. But hold on, just to give I want to give a brief summary of the UFC Performance Institute to everyone. So the UFC opened a state-of-the-art 15-acre, 184,000 square foot UFC Performance Institute last year. Goes beyond simply providing a space for fighters to physically train. In the word of the vice president of performance at the UFC, they wanted it to become a global leader in human performance. Meaning building a facility that not only covers nutrition, physical therapy, strength and conditioning, but also focus on research and development.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the cool part about it. So it's been open for a year. It was opened in May 2017. It's released its first ever comprehensive study of the sport of MMA with an 80-page document. Study covers 12 months of initial findings. It's really cool. And look, here's some of the stuff that they found. Performance benchmarks, they found average jump height of 23.8, with light heavyweights having the best performance standards for lower body. Men's featherweights have the highest relative strength measured as force to body weight. The highest injury risk by frequency comes out of striking techniques, accounting for 36.5% of injuries. The highest injury severity, though, comes from takedown and grappling, with an injury severity lasting from 112 to 129 days, respectively.
So I mean, not to cut you off, but what do you think like those injuries are then for like? So I bet you it's like ACL injuries for like grappling, and then like I'm trying to think of like
for striking it's probably hand.
Oh, I guess right.
Because Wilder, I've seen like I was watching Wilder highlights just to keep abreast of it earlier today, and in 2 of the fights where he was just smacking the shit out of someone, they're like, it was like the Showtime rundown, and the guy was like, Wilder tore his bicep as well as breaking his carpal
metacarpals.
Yeah, metacarpal, and it's like, so this guy's a torn, and he's just like, dude, you stop, stop. But I think probably it's going to be hand injuries for the striking, and like you said, ACL, maybe pectoral injuries for the takedowns.
Do you think that they constitute like any kind of swelling in the eye as an injury? Is swelling an injury?
No, I don't think so. I would say if there's like a broken blood vessel or something that causes the swelling, yeah. I mean, there would have to be something that you would categorize. You wouldn't categorize just random swelling from getting hit a bunch in injury.
I mean, I wouldn't, but maybe they do.
I don't think so.
But either way, I can still see that being the case, but that is really interesting.
Yeah, but they say, look, the last one is the most common injuries sustained during training are knee, 15%.
Oh, there you go.
Foot,
ACL, yeah.
10%, and shoulder, 9.7%. So shoulder and foot are basically second.
Foot surprising, shoulder and knee
I feel like
not
foot,
so much.
People are just like, I throw a leg kick, and it's like, these bones on the top of your foot are some of the most sensitive bones in the body.
I do know. If you throw a kick and someone checks that kick, or like
with their shin, you can shatter the top of your foot. Or it's fucking. I mean, you know better than me.
Yeah, it makes sense, definitely.
Yeah, but basically, I mean, what are your thoughts as being like? I mean, one of the things that you're doing right now is training to learn the USC's strength and conditioning program. To hopefully maybe even get a position within the Performance Institute, I believe. So what are your thoughts as someone who's a trainer on... You had a really interesting take on how now they're training together and what that kind of entails, because, training is such a secretive process. So can you break that down for us a little bit?
Yeah, there's a couple of good points about the UFC Performance Institute.
Thank you.
So one of the things here that the takeaway is it's a new facility where all fighters under the UFC contract are allowed to participate in. So I think this does a couple of things. For one, like you said, it really focuses. One of the things is it really focuses on weight cutting, and then there's a problem there, right? So a lot of UFC strength and conditioning coaches will kind of put their second hat on as the nutritionist. But if there is a specialty in nutrition, it's definitely going to be geared towards just weight cutting. So making that weight cut easier. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, but the sooner you get on your nutrition plan, the easier your weight cut will be. So let me put it this way. You don't want to come into your final week of a training camp and have to lose 15 pounds, 20 pounds. Like, it's going to be a tough weight cut. Like, you're going to have to lose a lot of water. But they do give you 24 hours to rehydrate. Yeah. So I like that the UFC is kind of there's a place for studying weight cutting, the effects of it, how to do it better, how to do it healthier. That's awesome. I also like the fact that USADA is involved. There's a lot of testing going on. Ronda Rousey brought up a good point. I think it was like 2015, 2016.
Wow.
She basically said that everyone out here is cheating, and she said when the first person dies and gets tested positive for a controlled substance like an anabolic steroid, it's going to ruin the sport, because that person will go down as probably attempted murder, right? I mean, it's the same thing as killing someone with loading your gloves or whatever.
Shit's gonna hit the fan, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
there was intent to do bodily harm. I know the sport.
At the very least, it's gonna be second degree. Yeah, it's gonna be second degree murder. They're gonna try some bullshit. I mean, I shouldn't say bullshit, but I mean.
And it's really clear though. If you look at the UFC and you look at the body types of people 10 years ago, it's a complete change. I mean, you'll see people. Sense? Oh, you'll see people that just like for instance, Overeem is what they used to call him, because he was just the most steroid jack dude I've ever seen. Alistair Overeem used to fight in Pride at like 180, 190. Mind you, he was younger, but like he was like 180, 190. He was like a pretty.
He was 180.
Yeah, he was a pretty fit individual. Like, don't get me wrong, but like he wasn't
like
He wasn't 270, like bigger than Brock Lesnar.
I know, he looks like Brock Lesnar's older African American brother.
Yeah. So that was when he was Overeem. He's kind of, if you watch him now, he's definitely lost a significant amount of body mass. So
he was getting his Jose Canseco on.
Yeah, Vitor Belfort. There's a few different fighters out there that you can just generally see a change. You can generally see a decline in their body types, but
that's wild.
That's not to say that you can't just be a great athlete and not take steroids, though.
Yeah, but the Performance Institute is going to help kind of hammer that out.
So yeah, I mean, there are so many testings that are going on, like random testings, and just the UFC bringing that in is huge. It's huge. So I really love that about the UFC Performance Institute. But there's one thing that they don't talk about that I think is like even a bigger part of it. It gives these young guys coming in with low amount of resources, their checks are small, they're probably still living at home. I mean, they're not making enough when they first sign with the UFC to probably even pay for a house or anything like that. Wow. Yeah, they're not making a lot of money. Very low, very little.
Yeah, I was reading, something about like Nate Diaz getting like
40 grand total. 20 grand.
20 grand for the fight, and then 20 grand for like fight of the night or some shit.
Right before Conor McGregor.
Yeah, the fight before. Yeah, I mean, granted, he took it on like short notice and he broke some contractual thing, but like that's wild. 40,000 for that fight. I mean, dude.
Yeah, they're just doing that, and like let's say Canelo Alvarez making $33 million a fight. So it's just scary. It's just a different. There's a different amount of resources that you can afford, right? And so
this levels the playing field in a sense.
It gives more opportunity to these fighters, definitely. Now
because
they have
nutritionists,
access. They have a facility, they have there's a huge transition that's taking place in the combat sports that has already been taking place in some of the more core sports in the United States, like basketball, football, baseball, where we're not just working out anymore to work out. We're working out scientifically.
Specifically.
How do we, what's our rest periods for our workouts? Are we training for power? Are we training for strength? Are we training for, what type of energy systems are we using? Are we using aerobic energy systems, anaerobic? Are we, what kind of nutrition do we need to use? So, after an anaerobic workout, your nutritional needs are going to be different than, let's say, if you were to do a 15-mile run, an aerobic workout, where you're just going to have a different nutritional need.
You're going to have to have different inputs in your body after a different type of workout.
And so when you're able to do these types of things, as well as functional workouts, so not just throwing up weights to throw up weights, how much can I lift? How many times can I lift it?
Jeez.
One of the problems that also happened with fighters is they were working out just too much, overtraining. I mean, people used to think like whoever trained the most won. Yeah. But now it's whoever trains the smartest wins.
Yeah.
And so,
let me ask you something behind that.
I
mean, not to just go off the Performance Institute, but at what point do you know at the particular point when fighters camps and trainers respectively started to figure out that you needed that last rest period before the fight, or because I'm sure fighters used to just train up until the last day.
Well, so there's just been a lot of old wise tales that get passed down. Like when I first started boxing, this is what they used to tell me: run 3 miles a day, hit the bag 10 rounds a day, hit the speed bag 5 rounds a day, and hit the double head bag 5 rounds a day, and do 500 sit-ups. That's your workout. It's like, and like that's just so general, and like that's just. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like it has a positive effect on someone, but there's just so many other things that I do now that just make me such a better athlete, and I just feel better inside the ring, in and out.
And those are things that you would say.
No,
they're like kind of tailor made for you though. Like that's kind of what the Performance Institute kind of illustrates, that like if you figure out what works for you specifically, what works for your body type, whether it be anaerobic or aerobic workout, and then also the food that you put into yourself. I mean, you got to figure out what works for you, right? Yeah,
we're definitely going through a like an enlightenment period in science when it comes to sports, where fighters are no longer just doing what they've done always, you know. So I'll do a little fight history before we move on.
Cool.
Jack Dempsey, one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. If you look back at him, he would probably be a middleweight. I mean, really, he was like 180, and he could have definitely lost some weight. He fought at the heavyweight division. He fought some great fighters like Henry Ketchel and as well as a few others. And one of the things that made him so great was not only his footwork, they called it the Dempsey Shuffle.
Ah, yes.
But they also, what he was able to do was he was able to bring with him the old knowledge. So I think a lot of us love to think that for some reason we're moving away from like these ancient secrets, and like sometimes these ancient secrets get watered down. Well, that actually is true in boxing, where there was very specific technique that took place. Jack Dempsey fought for the heavyweight title versus Henry Kitchell, and it was the first $1 million fight.
Wow.
And I forget how many spectators there was. It was some stupid amount. 30,000, 40,000 back then. Wow. If you look at the pictures, they were outside the stadium. The stadium looked like just a giant group of people. It didn't look like a normal stadium. It was insane. And what happened with that fight was all of a sudden people go, oh shit, there's a lot of money in boxing. And then everyone and their mom became a trainer. And it watered down the knowledge, and it started spreading all these weird freaking voodoo things in boxing, where, you know, Tay Atlas says it best. He says, you know, up until just a few years ago, some trainers thought that you shouldn't drink water in between rounds because it gives you cramps. You know, can you believe that? Like, you're not supposed to rehydrate because it gives you cramps. I mean, there's just like this old bullshit wise tales, and so I think UFC Performance Institute is just one of the many tools and things of changing that are going to bring a legitimacy to boxing and combat sports in general. MMA and combat sports in general.
Yeah.
And I think that's also what separates it from boxing, because boxing doesn't have any of this. It's still really based on some of that old wise tales, and only the elite boxers that get to the high paydays really have access to these elite trainers.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. The one thing I wanted to ask you about to finish off before we head into our 10 quickfires, I wanted to ask, maybe, I know there are some negatives of the Institute, and I think one of the ones that a lot of fighters might be concerned with, and that you could touch on better than me, is kind of exactly, you know what I'm going to say, is the proximity of being so close to other fighters and maybe learning some techniques that they don't want each other to learn, whether it be training style or whether it be, you know, how they work techniques or how they spar. Can you touch on that at all?
Yeah. So for most people who don't understand like the back ends of a lot of these of like how fighters operate, you know, they just see two guys coming into the ring. They don't you know, for all they know, like, they could be in the same fight camp. I mean, they don't really know. Like, it's very simple for someone to look at. So let's say Liverpool versus Chelsea, right? We know that Liverpool and Chelsea are two cities. They're completely separate from each other. They have different teams. They have different staff. They don't share any resources.
None.
In MMA, it's so different because you're not a team. You're an individual. So with the UFC, for instance, they have this facility, and many fighters are training now side by side that could potentially fight each other, or if not, are fighting each other.
Yeah.
So, there's this like trust issue in fighting, like, oh, you're giving my secrets away. Like, as a fighter, you don't want your opponent to know if you have like an injury to your shoulder that you're not telling them about. You don't want them to know if you continually drop your hands in sparring. Like, you don't want to share sparring partners. You don't want to share anything.
Or I mean, even if somebody, oh, I like to do the feint right, overhand left and then jab, like something is simple combo.
Yeah. And so people will, as a fighter, it's all about winning, and that's what makes you better. So that's what not makes you better, but that's what builds you up the ranks, and so yeah, it's a big deal for all these fighters coming into the UFC Performance Institute. They're really hesitant at first because they're reporting that people come in and they're kind of like, here's these strength coaches working with my opponent. They're gonna leak some information, but now they're starting to realize like that's not what it is. Yeah, and I'm sure it's such a big fucking institute that if two guys are fighting, if A fighter and B fighter, one's in the ring, one's in the weight room, like they're not always in the same room at the same time.
184,000 square feet. I would hope that they can be in different areas. Jeebus. So, dude, look, I think we covered all the subjects pretty damn heavy.
Yeah.
I think we did a great job of breaking it down. Look, we have many more subjects to cover next time you're on.
Yeah.
So, look, I got 10 odd quickfire questions for you.
Hit me.
Look, first of all, I got to give you the rules. There's no time limit, but you got to do it quickly. There's no prize. There's no nothing. It's worth jack shit, but it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, folks, do me a favor. Let's start the clock. Southpaw or regular?
Orthodox.
Vitaly or Vladimir? Vladimir. UFC or boxing?
UFC,
I like it. Mayweather, McGregor?
Mayweather. Wait, in what? The ring?
I don't know.
Just in general, Mayweather. All
right. Ferguson, Nurmagomedov? Nurmagomedov. All right. Shit talker or respectful fighter?
Shit
talker. You heard it, folks. All right. So, company to be sponsored by: Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, Puma, or other?
Reebok.
Let's go. All right. So, if aliens exist, this is saying that they do. Are they smarter or dumber than us? Dumber. Second person to say dumber. I like it. That's faith in the human race, folks. And we got, pre-fight, chicken or beef as a protein? Chicken. All right, finally. 10th and final. Tyson or Ali?
Well, in the words of Mike Tyson, Ali is the greatest of all time.
He's going with Muhammad Ali, folks. Look, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the quickfire questions. All right, guys, look, thank you so much for tuning in again. I appreciate your time this morning, this afternoon, whenever you're watching. Again, shout out to you and yours. Thank you so much for watching the OddCast, where stuff that's odd gets the nod. Cody, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, that was great being here.
If there's anything you want to say to the fans, thank them for their time. Just do one last shout out. Tell them what you're up to, and tell them how they can reach you.
Definitely reach me. I'm a boxing trainer at Encinitas Boxing in San Diego. Love to have you guys out there. Hold mitts for you, whether you need help in a fight camp, you need some helps on new and interesting ways to spice up your fighting style. Love to help you out. Expert boxing and Muay Thai. Love to be a part. Reach out to me via email, codyjames.coach@gmail.com. If you need any times on what my schedule is, send me an email and I'll respond.
And I'll put all that information in the Instagram post and on the YouTube post. So guys, if there was anything you wanted to like, comment, or subscribe on the video, please. Cody, let me shake your hand one last time. Thank you so much for your time. And yo, let's walk it on out.
Let's get a little weird. Let's get a little odd. Those sounds you like to hear. We got it going on. It's the OddCast. It's the OddCast. It's the OddCast. It's the OddCast.